This is my favorite LEGO creation of all time. There's so much about this MOC that is just incredible. So in this video, let's break down why I love this so much, and maybe learn a thing or two about how this could help us with our own LEGO creations. Let's go. This is New Hashima Sector 8, a stunning cyberpunk city MOC that was on display at Brick Fair, Virginia 2022. Stefan Builds Lego built a lot of the kind of lower city infrastructure, but he had help with this project from a variety of different collaborators, which include the following people: Brayley711, Tobias Wellen, Logan Patron, On Stranger Captain, George House 4, M Soccer 2, Cymox, BJ Mox, MijiW, and General JJ Builds. There's plenty of brilliant details and movement and lights and other fantastic things scattered all throughout this MOC. But before we take a look at this in detail, why have I given this the title of my favorite LEGO creation of all time? That's a pretty big claim. So to back up my thoughts, let's first discuss what, at least in my opinion, makes a MOC good. I'll explain my thoughts with reference to another MOC that's a little bit smaller and easier to break down, and then we'll get back to the Cyberpunk MOC. So here's that MOC. This is by Jonas Kram, and this is called Jiru's Vegetables. Immediately something I look for in a MOC is clever part usages. And this MOC was built for the Iron Builder competition, so it was essentially designed around having nice part usages. Jonas here has used this Track Switch 9V Lego train piece. This is it on Bricklink here. And he's done it in a variety of creative ways. He says that he's been able to put this piece in this MOC 40 times. Some of the ones that I could notice are how many he's used here on the roof. There's some used on the power pole as well. The base of the sign has some, as does this sign. They're used as decorations on the back here. And then the seat structure here uses those pieces as well, and it's also on this sign as well. The fact that it's been used in so many fantastic ways, and in ways that are so organic and natural, they're not forced in any way, that's awesome. So it certainly ticks that NPU box for me. But at the same time, he's also used some hair pieces for food, he's even used a couple hair pieces for rocks, and then he's used these cactus figure arm pieces as vegetables, so he really ticks that NPU box. There's also a wonderful sense of realism to this MOC. I love creations that feel like a real lived-in world, and they don't shy away from the details and go the extra mile to feel like it could just easily come to life. And this has certainly achieved that here with the use of some lovely landscaping in the background, animals scattered all throughout the build, and then these power lines, which are a really nice addition. Good building techniques are another thing that make a MOC really shine, and this has a lot of those. The use of the rope element pieces here for the power lines, as well as this cable on the air conditioning, nice details. There's also some part spamming to create a brilliant roof design, lovely technique, and also some simple but nicely made walls for this building. There's just the right amount of detail to make it look like how they actually would in real life. And I think knowing when to use less pieces to achieve a desired aesthetic, that's important. Overcomplicating something isn't always a good thing, but this does this just right. And finally, this MOC has some level of storytelling. Sure, it's a really simple story. Dude visits a sweet old lady's store and gets some food, but you can still tell what's going on. And I've seen plenty of MOCs in the past where it's really difficult to understand what's happening because the story isn't very clearly conveyed. But hey, sometimes less is more, and that's exactly what this is. So with the ideas of NPU, capturing realism, good building techniques, and storytelling, let's keep all of that in mind and analyze in a little bit more detail why this MOC is so very good. So does this MOC have good part usages? Absolutely. Right off the bat, we can see this Duplo cushion piece, and it comes on this specific set as well as a few others. And it's being repeated across this skyscraper to form this unique pattern. I think that's such an awesome look, and I think it's really smart to use bulk of a Duplo piece, because they're pretty cheap and easy to get, and not many people want them. So it makes it easier and affordable to spam them all over this building. The rest of the MOC is littered with a lot of unique and strange pieces that help feed into that overall cyberpunk vibe. There's a lot of wonderful choices to include various stickered and printed elements that look like advertising, another staple of Cyberpunk. We also see on this large skyscraper the use of a bunch of these storybook container pieces that come on these Disney storybook sets. Using them to form large panels on the exterior of these buildings is super smart and looks wonderful. So that's just a few of the clever part usages on this build, but there's plenty more all throughout this MOC. I just don't have time to cover them all. But it's safe to say that it certainly passes the NPU test. Now, does this MOC capture a sense of realism? Absolutely. Seeing so much movement and shining lights really does bring this MOC to life. And the fact that there's so many levels to this MOC, and everywhere you look, something's going on. It's just incredible. And honestly, I think it's a brilliant experience to look at. The idea that there's so many little details like trash left on the side of the street, or washing hanging out to dry, cracks in the sidewalk, or even like a couple windows being left open on the buildings, it makes this feel so real, and it really gives the sense that this is a lived-in world. I mean, also the fact that no matter where you look at this MOC, you get some fantastic views, and if you look down low, you can sometimes peek through and see gaps that lead to other areas of the city. So you almost feel like a minifigure in the world, walking around the space and really taking in the city. It's a really nice experience. So yeah, certainly ticks that box. Are there any good building techniques? Oh yeah, there's a lot of nice graffiti on this MOC, and some of the snot work that's used to achieve this is very nice. There's also a lot of attention to detail with faded colours on the monorail track, or rusted metal, or just dirty textures. It just feels like things are aged and lived in. Plus the fact that so many of these walls aren't just blank bricks. They've got dirt, they've got grime, they've got brickwork, or details that kind of fill in these areas and make them visually interesting. It gives it so much life. And I think this to me is the single most impressive part of this MOC. It's huge, but the detail isn't ignored. I see so many builders who make huge MOCs, and in doing so, they forget to add in detail. They think the size is enough to carry the MOC, but in my opinion, it just starts to get boring. Sure, it's big, and that's nice, but I don't know, I want to study the intricate details inside this huge structure. Size alone isn't enough to carry it. Detail is what makes it feel alive. And thankfully the details aren't ignored on this MOC, despite its size. With the previous MOC I showed you by Jonas, it's packed full of detail, but it's so small, and that is easier and cheaper to do. But to see the same level of detail on something this huge? Wow, you just don't see that every day. It's unbelievably impressive to see so much detail over such a huge space, especially knowing the amount of time, effort, and cost that it would take to do that. Some of the nice building techniques on this include the wonderful curved walls on this building, and also the fact that it uses so many gorgeous chrome 1x2 tiles. I love seeing odd colours being used, and I also love the fact that these are very, very expensive to get in a good large quantity, so it's nice to see something that you probably couldn't afford to do yourself. I certainly couldn't. A lot of the lettering is also very well done and really adds so much to the buildings. Even something like the wedge plates that are integrated onto the top of this tower are awesome. The lovely patterns here really kind of sell this futuristic sci-fi look, and it's really just the icing on the cake. I mean, when you think about it, it didn't need that level of detail, but the fact that it's there is so nice to see. So yes, it's there and it's in full force. And finally, does this have any good storytelling? I think so. We can see a riot going on one side of this MOC, and I think this paints a nice picture of a possibly over-policed society, and civil unrest is brewing and maybe starting to reach a breaking point. So already there's some nice world building that's established. And now while this is maybe the most obvious bit of storytelling on the MOC, I like the fact that the rest of the figures here are just enjoying their day-to-day lives, exploring the city, eating, traveling, doing whatever. The fact that a lot of the minifigures are just doing fairly ordinary stuff is good. It feels like a real, regular lived-in city, and that's the kind of stuff you would see people doing in a city. So it makes sense. I think it's so easy to look at minifigures in this and wonder what they're doing, where they're traveling to, what are they feeling, what's on their mind. And I think that's because this build is just overflowing with life and love, and you just can't help but want to create stories. So yeah, I think it ticks all the boxes of what I love to see in MOCs. And it does them to a very high standard too, so that's why I love this so much. But one last thing on this MOC that's very commendable is the fact that there's just the right amount of detail everywhere. I see a lot of MOCs that just have way too much going on, and it just becomes overwhelming to look at. So it's nice to see a MOC like this where they've deliberately left a lot of open and empty space, and that way you aren't overstimulated. You're gently welcomed into this world and invited to look around, rather than seeing just way too much happening and not wanting to look at all. They've balanced just the right amount of detail to still be engaging and interesting. And again, I think that's a really hard thing to nail. It's a very delicate balance, but all the builders of this build nailed it. So yeah, well done to everyone involved on this project. There is a magical sense of life and realism to this, with so many incredible building ideas, techniques, and much, much more. And it's been captured on such an impressive scale too. It was a blessing to be able to see this at Brick Fair, Virginia, and hey, if you ever have the opportunity to see this at a LEGO convention, do take it up because it's a magical thing to see in person. Thank you for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.